All right, so we're diving in again today, and this time we're going to be looking at some excerpts from a personal reflection by James Wilding. Now, he's the academic principal over at Clare's Court School, and he is beginning, get this, his 44th year
44th year, wow.
at the school. And he's kind of taking a look back at his journey in education and where he's at and where he's going. But what I think is really interesting about this is the kind of unexpected places that he finds inspiration.
Yeah.
We're talking about people like Admiral William McRaven
Oh, yeah.
and Jeff Goldblum.
Really, what an interesting mix.
Yeah.
I mean, what in the world do those two have to do with each other?
And how do they tie into education?
Yeah. At the beginning of this reflection, James actually asks this question. What does he, George Bernard Shaw, and Jeff Goldblum all have in common? And it turns out the answer is their perspective. It's about life, and it's about work, and it's about leaving a mark on the world.
So obviously, James has dedicated his life to Clare's Court. I mean, this is a school that his parents founded way back in 1960. He's 71 now, and he started there as a teacher just right out of University of Leicester.
Yeah.
He got a degree in combined sciences. You would think after 44 years, he might be thinking about retirement.
Yeah, you'd think so, right? I mean, that's a long career at this point.
Right. And so, but I think it's interesting that his perspective is so different from his parents' generation, who eagerly awaited that next chapter.
Oh, yeah. I remember my grandparents, just counting down the days till they could retire. It seems like for James, it's almost the opposite.
Right.
Like he's got this passion, this energy for education, for using all those years of experience to shape future generations. And, thinking back to Admiral McRaven,
Right.
you probably know him from his book, Make Your Bed.
Oh, yeah.
Which talks all about, these small actions and the importance of hope. I think James is really drawn to this idea of making a difference, even if it's through these seemingly small actions.
Right.
Then we have Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum.
Now, in a recent birthday message, he actually quoted George Bernard Shaw on the purpose of life and work. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I saw that. It was a pretty long quote, but man, was it full of meaning.
It was a lot to unpack. So Shaw writes, "This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one." Okay. Being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. Big statement, right? But then he keeps going. "I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations."
Wow, just reading that even gives me chills. What strikes you about that? What part of that quote really resonates with you?
I think it's fascinating how he ties fulfillment to purposeful work. It's not about selfish gain.
Right.
It's about contributing to something bigger than yourself. It's living life to the absolute fullest and really making your mark, And I think that really, really resonates with James's dedication to education.
Yeah, I can see that connection too. I mean, for James, his splendid torch really is education.
Absolutely.
It's shaping young minds. It's giving them these tools to thrive.
Mhm.
But he also acknowledges that education is changing, like rapidly changing.
It is. It is. And he talks about this shift. We've gone from this focus on practical skills and problem solving to a more knowledge-head approach. In the past, students might have been assessed on, building something or, solving a real-world problem. But now, with so much information available online, it's how do you assess real understanding? How do you assess the ability to critically apply that knowledge?
Right. It's one thing to memorize facts and figures, but it's another thing to know what to do with them.
Exactly, exactly. And that's a challenge. I mean, it makes you wonder, how do educators keep up with the pace, especially with AI becoming, more and more prevalent?
Right.
How do you stay ahead of that curve?
That's a great question. And it's something that we'll explore further as we delve deeper into James's reflections.
It really does make you think. And, James is a great example of this commitment to continuous learning. He isn't just reflecting on the past, He's looking ahead, too, embracing these new technologies and trying to figure out, how do I adapt? How do I make this work for my students? It's really inspiring to see somebody with so much experience still be so eager to learn and grow.
It really is, yeah. It kind of makes me think about Shaw's quote again.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned how it emphasizes finding that fulfillment in purposeful work. But what does that mean for someone who, maybe isn't an educator or in a profession where they feel they have that direct impact?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a great question. And, I think it speaks to this idea that purpose isn't limited to a certain job title or profession.
Right. It's about finding meaning and value in whatever you do,
Right.
whether that's raising a family, volunteering in your community, pursuing a creative passion. I mean, you name it.
So it's less about the what you do and more about the how you do it.
I think so. Yeah. It's that intention, the effort you put into it.
Right, right.
Makes me think about, even something as simple as Mick Raven's advice, right? Make your bed every morning.
Oh, yeah.
Might seem small,
Right.
but it sets a tone for the day.
Yeah.
A small action, but it creates this sense of order and purpose.
I like that. Yeah. It's a good reminder that even the small things can have this ripple effect. Speaking of small things, James mentions how some of the skills he learned back in the day just seem almost obsolete now. Like, remember when scouts had to learn how to use gas masks and handle crowds?
I do. I do. And it's a funny example, but it really shows you just how much the world has changed in such a short amount of time.
It really does.
And it really underscores the need to be adaptable, to embrace this idea of lifelong learning.
Oh, yeah. What we learn in school is just the starting point. It's up to us to keep building on that foundation.
I like that. And it makes me think about the flashlight analogy again. Just as flashlights have evolved, become more efficient and powerful, we need to evolve and adapt too as this world keeps changing around us.
Absolutely. And that evolution, it isn't always going to be easy.
Right.
There are going to be challenges,
Yeah.
setbacks along the way, but that's part of the journey. And I think it's in those moments, those challenging moments, that we learn and grow the most.
Right. And it's in those moments that we discover the true strength and brilliance of our own splendid torches.
I like that a lot. It's that reminder that we all have something unique and valuable to offer the world.
So how can we tap into that? How do we find our own splendid torches and make them burn bright?
Well, I think it starts with asking ourselves some tough questions.
Hmm.
What are we truly passionate about? What makes us come alive? What kind of impact do we want to have on the world?
Those are some big questions. And yeah, they might not have easy answers,
Right.
but I think the journey of figuring that out is where the magic happens.
Yeah. It's a process, for sure. And, one that James definitely seems to be embracing. He's not just sticking with how it's always been done.
Right.
He's like, how can I make this better? How can I adapt? How can I make this, really relevant and exciting for my students?
And that's what makes his perspective so valuable, right?
Yeah.
He's seen education change so much
Oh,
over
yeah.
decades. Like, I can't even imagine all the things that he's had to adapt to. And one of the biggest things he points out is this impact of information. Like, we have information everywhere
Yeah, at our fingertips.
at our fingertips. And AI, which is just, changing the landscape completely.
Mm.
It's no longer enough to just memorize a bunch of facts. No, definitely not. And that's something I've definitely experienced firsthand.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember spending hours memorizing dates and formulas for tests and things like that. And now you just, you pull out your phone, you do a quick search, and it's right there. So what does that mean for how we learn and what we value in education?
It's a big question, isn't it? I think it's a shift. Like, we're going from this focus on just acquiring knowledge to really being able to apply it.
Right.
Students need to be able to think critically, to be able to sort through all that information and figure out, okay, what's credible, what's not,
Right.
and then what do I do with this information? How do I use it to solve problems, to be creative?
So it's not just knowing the what, but also the why and the how.
Exactly, exactly. And that means we need a different approach to teaching
Right.
and learning. It's about fostering curiosity, encouraging students to experiment, really creating an environment where they feel empowered to explore, to discover.
And maybe it's about helping them find their own splendid torch too, right? Like those things that really light them up, that give them a sense of purpose.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. When students are passionate, when they're engaged, they're going to learn more, they're going to retain that information better, and they're going to use it in ways that really matter.
It's like that passion. It ignites this fire in them.
Absolutely.
And it just keeps burning. It doesn't go out when they leave school.
That's a great way to put it. And it goes back to Shaw's idea, of being thoroughly used up, like really living a life full of passion, of purpose, of contributing something.
And I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about, just in terms of how we approach our work, our passions, how we want to make a difference in the world.
It really has. We talked about finding that purpose in our work, the importance of never stopping learning and, making a difference. It doesn't matter how big or small.
And we learned from these inspiring individuals like James, Admiral McRaven, even, Jeff Goldblum and George Bernard Shaw, and they all show us, in their own ways, how to live a life full of purpose and passion.
And so as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this one thought. What is your splendid torch? What makes you feel alive? What gives your life meaning? Take some time to think about that. The answer might surprise you.
You're right.
And who knows, maybe it'll light a fire that not only eliminates your path, but also inspires those around you.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.